Back in the ancient world, farmers had no chemical sprays, no bottled insecticides, and honestly, no high-tech garden solutions at all. Yet somehow, they managed to grow abundant harvests season after season. Their secret wasn't magic, it was observation. They watched nature closely, learned the patterns of pests, and discovered something pretty extraordinary. Certain plants could actually be used as bait. These plants didn't just survive attacks from insects, they actually invited them in, luring pests away from the food crops that mattered most. This was really the birth of trap cropping, a strategy so effective that armies of locusts could swarm a field, and the harvest would still be saved. Today, this nearly forgotten method could be, honestly, the single most powerful weapon in your garden's defense arsenal, and the best part is, it's completely chemical-free. So picture an ancient farmer in Mesopotamia, carefully sowing two different seeds side by side. One was for food, and the other was never meant to be eaten. It was sacrificial. When pests came, they attacked the decoy, leaving the grain untouched. This wasn't superstition, it was biology in action, and honestly, it's just as relevant now as it was 3,000 years ago. Today, we'll revive three of the most reliable trap crops used by farmers from different corners of history: marigolds for nematodes, mustard for flea beetles, and amaranth for leaf miners. Each one works in a specific, targeted way, and once you set them up correctly, they'll defend your garden like silent, leafy bodyguards. Marigolds, the underground assassin. The story of marigolds as pest fighters begins in ancient Mesoamerica, where the Aztecs cultivated them not just for their brilliant golden flowers, but for their strange power over the unseen world beneath the soil. Farmers noticed that plots with marigolds had healthier roots and fewer crop failures. Only centuries later did science confirm the reason marigolds release chemicals from their roots, compounds like alpha-terthianol, that are deadly to microscopic nematodes, the worm-like pests that silently attack plant roots. To use marigolds as a trap crop, you don't simply scatter them around randomly. The old farmers planted them thickly around the edges of crop beds or interspersed them in neat, repeating lines between food plants. This created a scented chemical barrier underground. The nematodes drawn to marigold roots were either killed or kept so occupied that they never reached the main crop. For best results, plant marigolds several weeks before your vegetables so their root systems, and pest-repelling compounds, have time to develop fully. The effect is not just protective but also ornamental, turning your garden borders into bands of gold that double as living shields. Mustard, the flea beetle magnet. If marigolds work below ground, mustard works above it, and in full view. Ancient Indian farmers growing vegetables in the Indus Valley often faced plagues of tiny, jumping flea beetles that could strip young seedlings bare in days. They discovered that planting mustard nearby acted like a beacon for these pests. Mustard leaves, tender and packed with the plant's characteristic mustard oils, proved irresistible to flea beetles. The beetles would swarm to the mustard plants first, feasting on them while ignoring the more valuable crops. But the genius of the method was in timing. Farmers planted mustard slightly earlier than the main crop, ensuring it was lush and ready to lure in pests at the critical moment when vegetable seedlings were most vulnerable. Once the flea beetles were concentrated on the mustard, farmers could either remove and destroy the infested plants, or leave them to keep attracting the pests throughout the season. In some cases, they planted successive waves of mustard to maintain a constant decoy, essentially herding the beetles where they wanted them. In a modern garden, this works beautifully for protecting crops like eggplant, radish, and brassicas. The mustard acts as a sacrificial feast, allowing your main crop to grow untouched. You know, it's a perfect example of how the most effective defense can actually be as simple as giving the enemy what it wants. Just, well, not from the plants you're trying to save. Amaranth, the leaf miner's distraction. If you travel back to the fields of ancient Central and South America, you'd find amaranth growing tall and proud, not just as a staple grain but also as a strategic ally against leaf miners. Now leaf miners are these small insect larvae that live inside plant leaves, carving winding tunnels that damage crops from within. For many vegetables, these pests can be devastating, but for amaranth, honestly, they're merely a nuisance. The key lies in amaranth's tough, fibrous leaves. Leaf miners are drawn to them, maybe because the leaves are easy to locate and packed with nutrients. Once inside, however, the damage is superficial, and the plant continues growing vigorously. Ancient farmers noticed that if amaranth was planted alongside spinach, lettuce, or chard, the leaf miners would overwhelmingly choose the amaranth first, leaving the more delicate greens untouched. To use amaranth effectively as a trap crop today, position it strategically near the crops most vulnerable to leaf miners. You can plant it in alternating rows or in perimeter lines. Once infested, the amaranth leaves can be pruned off and removed, taking the pests with them. Some gardeners even allow the amaranth to complete its life cycle, harvesting the seeds at the end of the season, a bonus food source from a plant that has already paid for itself in protection. What makes trap cropping so enduring is that it works on the natural instincts of pests. Insects, are guided by scent, color, taste, and plant chemistry. Trap crops exploit these senses, creating plants that are more attractive than the target crop in one or more of these ways. It's not really about killing pests outright, but about redirecting their behavior. The technique is as much psychology as biology, and honestly, it can be adapted to almost any pest if you know what it prefers. Ancient farmers didn't understand this in terms of chemical compounds or insect behavior charts. They understood it through generations of observation. A farmer in the 12th century didn't need to know the Latin name of a flea beetle. He just knew that when mustard was nearby, his cabbages survived. This kind of knowledge, passed down orally and through practice, was nearly lost with the industrialization of agriculture. But for those who bring it back, the results can be just as dramatic today as they were hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Reviving these ancient trap crop methods in a modern garden is not just about pest control. It's a living connection to the farmers who fed civilizations before ours. It's an act of preservation, not just of crops, but of wisdom. By planting marigolds, mustard, and amaranth in specific ways, you're not only creating a healthier, more resilient garden, you're reenacting a strategy that has safeguarded harvests since the dawn of agriculture. These plants don't require chemical intervention, they don't upset the ecological balance, and they often bring other benefits, from attracting pollinators to improving soil. They remind us that nature itself provides the tools we need. We simply have to use them with care and intention. If ancient farmers could stand in your garden today, they'd recognize these trap crops immediately. They'd understand the reasoning, smile at the familiar patterns, and perhaps tell you that you are part of a tradition far older than you realize. In a world that often chases the newest solution, this is a case where the oldest might just be the best. The knowledge of trap crops is a piece of history you can plant, tend, and harvest in your own backyard. Try it, and you might find that you don't just grow better vegetables. You grow a deeper respect for the intelligence of those who came before us. Subscribe to In the Beginning for more forgotten farming methods, lost survival skills, and ancient wisdom that still works today. Share this with anyone who loves history gardens or the timeless strategies that have kept humans fed for millennia. Together, we can keep these stories alive, not just in words, but in living, growing practice.